Guys, it's a Friction here. Tank12, having to call me, I don't really care. Welcome back to World Tanks, where we are today taking a look at the KV-5. This revisited episode is about one of the most infamous vehicles in all of World Tanks, and probably one of the oldest premium tanks in the game. I think there are not many that are older. Maybe the M6A2E1, maybe one of the lower tier premiums, the Panzer 4 or 5. But the KV-5 is one of those icons of World of Tanks, and even people who haven't played World of Tanks do know that, okay, KV-5, that is from World of Tanks. That's from the game. Now, I've bought this puppy in 2015, so about 5 years after World of Tanks started in the closed beta. And even in 2015, the KV-5 had, I would say, seen the best of its time pass already. And if you add another, 9 years on top of that, since 2015, the KV-5 is now in a dire state. I think we can be very blunt. The KV-5 is a tank that I hope Wargaming never sell again, because the tank doesn't really have all that much value left in itself, except for the fact that it's a collector's item. That is the only reason why I still think that the KV-5 is a valuable choice. Now, I know I'm going to be offending quite a few of you guys. I'm going to be making you pretty angry because the KV-5 has a lot of nostalgia to it. But the KV-5 doesn't have the impact it used to have in the game. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's first take a quick look at the characteristics, jump into 2 replays, and then I can show you all of the things that make the KV-5, and then all of the things that make the KV-5 that doesn't really do all that much anymore. So, first and foremost, this tank has a legendary 107mm gun. It's the CIS-6M. This used to be on the KV-2. Quick disclaimer, I'm going to be having a video up in the near future about the KV-2 in War Thunder, where they still have the CIS-6M gun. So that's going to be quite interesting. And this tank screams old school. Now, just take a quick look at the penetration stats for the KV-5. The standard AP round has 196mm of standard pen. The premium round, the APCR shell, has 219mm of penetration. Both of them atrocious at tier 8. I think we can agree on that. Shell velocity also pretty bad for an APCR shell and an AP shell. Only 830 meters per second on the AP shell, and only 1038 on the APCR shell. Now, this gun back then with 300 alpha damage was pretty damn good. You know, rate of fire is decent, 7.8 rounds per minute. You have decent gun handling. You have 7 degrees of gun depression, which is much better than a lot of other Soviet heavy tanks. But this tank really needs it because of its height. And the gun traverse speed is okay as well with 26.63. It's a heavy tank. It doesn't turn its turret very quickly. Having said all that, in the year 2024, these gun characteristics are horrific. These are horrific. Now, just take a quick look at Renegade, which was released maybe 5 years ago. Maybe 2019, 2018, I don't remember exactly. This thing has a 105mm gun. This tank is balanced. It no longer is overpowered or was ever overpowered. It has 10 degrees of gun depression. It has 360 alpha damage, so 60 more than the KV-5. It has 226mm of standard penetration with the AP round, and 260 with the APCR shell, 255. The rate of fire is the exact same. The gun traverse speed is better, and dispersion, aim time, DPM, better than the KV-5. So the KV-5, this is an old school vehicle with old school stats. Now, one of the key features why the KV-5 was so romanticized and so well liked is its armor. The armor still works in certain regards in the year 2024, but in a lot of other regards, the armor is now completely obsolete. You have the R2-D2 turret, which always has been the biggest weak spot at the front. You have a turret on top with 190mm thickness. Some tanks will not go through, others will bounce it. No, others will pen it. And you have 190 millimeters thickness at the front of the turret. Now, back in the days where medium tanks had maybe 190 millimeters overall penetration with their 90 millimeter guns, that wasn't that bad. But in the year 2024, where you have about the average alpha damage of 300, 320, maybe 360 at tier 8, you're going to have a really tough time, because most of the tanks also have about 220, 30 millimeters of penetration with their standard rounds. And then they definitely have a very good premium round, which is going to be able to cut right through the front of the tank. Now, one of the features that players used to do and still like to do when they play the KV-5 is the reverse side scraping technique. And that technique is probably still the best that you can use if you are fighting in the KV-5, because you can see the track and the side armor right here is about, it can go up to 300 millimeters armor thickness. But what you have to keep in mind is that the engine deck, which is actually rather high, is also a weak spot, and you can go through right there. But at least you can hide the R2-D2 turret, and if you're turning your turret towards them and you're facing them from the front, they can still go through the flat surface right there, because there is only a very small slope. It's sloped only in a way that's still very flat. So survivability, firepower, all outdated completely. Mobility also outdated. This tank used to be able to ram other vehicles. The top speed is still pretty good for a vehicle of the weight class, 115 tons if you really want to have that pure weight. But the specific power to weight ratio won't ever allow you to speed up unless you're going down a hill. So ramming things is going to be a very specific kind of scenario where you can really ram something that's in front of you and you can go right into it and maybe do some damage. But generally speaking, the KV-5 is looking very outdated, and it feels outdated to play as well. So without further ado, let's jump into 2 replays. I don't want to have them too long, and then we can have a little bit of a verdict on who really should still be buying the KV-5 if it comes around, and if, well, you should not play the KV-5 anymore in the year 2024. But I think most of you guys already know the answer, and we're going to jump on over to the replays right now. The first game that I'm going to be showing you guys is on the map Pearl River, and we're going to be taking the middle. This is actually a good game. You'll see, the stats are nothing groundbreaking, but for the KV-5, these stats afterwards are pretty decent, especially in the year 2024, where you're facing a lot of tier 9 vehicles and a lot of premium vehicles that are actually quite damn strong. So, I forgot to mention the KV-5 has preferential matchmaking, so you won't be facing tier 10 vehicles, you'll only be facing tier 9s, but I've been facing tier 9s a lot now, and having 217 millimeters of penetration, 219, excuse me, with the premium APCR round is not a lot of fun. Right here you can see we get penned by the Object 590, but this Object 590 is going to have a really hard time against us, because I think his tank is also not that great. The Object 590 doesn't look like a total screamer to me. But as soon as a real tank comes around the corner, the UDAS-16, we get our very first taste of the weak spot, which is the R2-D2 turret. You can see he penned us very easily, went right through there, and now we are down to 1,300 HP. And that went very, very quickly. And we've only played about 2.5 minutes by this point. This UDAS-16, he plays a very aggressive move right here, maneuvers forward. We do track him, shoot him right through the side, but, you know, the 196 millimeters of penetration, if you hit the tracks, there are going to be a lot of times where you're going to have these critical damage shots without any damage, and that happened again right there against the Object 590. So whenever you really need to pen something, you have to utilize the premium rounds, and you know, the premium rounds only offer about 30 millimeters more penetration. It's not going to change the world, it's just going to be way more expensive, so playing the KV-5 is just not a lot of fun if you're facing very heavy armored tanks at tier 9. But that always has been the case. The KV-5 has never really had the gun that allowed it to go up against super heavy vehicles. but it was always still able to do some damage against like light, medium tanks and heavies that were that you were able to flank. So it's also a tier 7 gun, we cannot forget that. We're still fighting the good fight against this Object 590. He's managed to pen us one more time, and we are down to about 9,000 HP. 1,000 HP is a pretty good point. And this Object 590 probably regretted his choice of driving forward, because we pen him once more through the cupola on top, the viewport, and we managed to get him out of the game, dealing almost all of the damage against himself. So 1,500 HP dealt so far in terms of damage, and now it's all about taking on this IS-6B. Now, I didn't know that at this point there was still a IS-6B that was platooning with this other IS-6B that hasn't been spotted by anyone. So I didn't look on the top right corner. This Meal, or Burask, is now moving in, and we thought, you know, we can team tag this IS-6, and I immediately waste my shell trying to go through the side of the turret on the IS-6, but he turned in time. And you can just see that the reload time for a heavy tank is rather fast, but the amount of damage, the amount of pen you have, it's not fast enough. Now, if they would improve the penetration and the rate of fire on the KV-5, it could still be like an interesting choice, but if you don't have any of that, it's just going to be very frustrating to play. But I don't want to write off the armor completely, and I'm going to show you guys exactly how the armor can work in your favor if you have two clueless enemy players. These two clueless enemy players are the two IS-6Bs, and you'll see exactly what I mean with that in just a second. We're losing the eastern flank, we don't have any more heavies over there. Penning the IS-6 also kind of a challenge if you aren't able to hit the side or hit the commander, the ports up there, which I do because the tank is high enough. The IS-6 still has more longevity, it still has more life in it because of the armor, the way the armor works on the IS-6 in comparison to the KV-5. Even though both suffer from very low penetration and both have preferential matchmaking. But you can see that this thing is fairly competent if the enemy tanks don't know where to shoot it. The KV-5 can be incredibly resilient if the enemy team has no clue how to fight a KV-5. And that's something you will not be seeing often in 2024, because the players that are still playing this game either have all of the knowledge of these tanks because they've been playing them for over 10 years now, or you're playing against a couple of new players that will spam maybe gold, and there are only a very select few new players that are completely unable to go through you because they don't know the basics of the game. In the end, we get knocked out by the T-34, having dealt 3,500 damage, which is a very good number for the KV-5 in the year 2024. But we are in this very uncomfortable situation where our team is now losing the fight with an A Phase 1, the only Tier 9 standard tank next to two artillery pieces that are still in the game, and the IS-6Bs and the T-34. We have a KPZ-07RH who is now capping, but with a minute and 30 seconds, the IS-6 tanks should not have any problem getting back to base. At least, that's what you think. This T-34 right now is engaging our A Phase 1, and I was really confused why the A Phase 1 wasn't really helping me with the IS-6Bs. Turns out it might be a bot. He maneuvered backwards towards the T-34, gave him his rear, and the T-34 can just go right through the engine neck while he shot his turret. Now, this is a very confusing matchup, because the AE Phase 1 should have no problem with a T-34 at tier 8, even with 30% HP. You could see that just a couple of seconds ago, the IS-6B is still in the middle. Their base is being capped for over, like, almost a minute now. Where is the IS-6 going? Where are the IS-6s? Why are they not resetting the cap? Why are they not driving back? This T-34 is playing very cautiously. He's waiting for the AE Phase 1 to move towards him. The A Phase 1 does it as well. And I want to show you guys this. He shoots the turret again, at least with a heat round. Gets absolutely knocked the sense out of him by the T-34. And now, with only 8 seconds remaining in the game, one IS-6B is all of the sudden coming around and engaging the cap, but he's unable to reset it. We win the game. And I write, I think very fittingly as well, what a shit show. This is peak World of Tanks in the year 2024. Okay, let's move on to another gameplay where we can have the final verdict as well. And that's where I can show you just how outdated the KV-5 really is and how easily penned you can get if the players know what they're doing and if they see a KV-5. The second gameplay is much more the standard experience of any KV-5 player's daily business. So for the second replay, we're playing a match on the map Fjords, and I'm going to try to contest the middle, because I think to have mid control on this map is going to allow you a lot of ability to fight on any front. But I immediately noticed that there is not a lot of support, and we've already committed, and it's a bad choice. It's a very bad idea. Just look at how quickly we lose a lot of HP because everyone is shooting the R2D2 turret, and now there is an Indian Panzer up here who is going to be strictly only firing APCR ammunition with 258 millimeters of pen, and he goes through our tank every single time by just shooting. It doesn't really matter, he just shoots like the gun mantlet and the turret, and you can just see that it's not a lot of fun to be playing the KV-5 in this scenario. Now, obviously, we cannot win this fight, but it shows you that the armor on the KV-5 is, at least if players know it's a KV-5 and they have some experience against it, they will not wait for a moment to put you out of your misery. You can see the enemy team is pushing us very aggressively, and once more, the side and the rear armor of this tank actually are the key to bouncing a lot of shots, the tracks especially. But as soon as they have like the front, they have like enough pen to go through the turret at the back, you're gonna be done. So yeah, what does this tell us about the KV-5? The KV-5 is a tank that probably lives best as a memory, as a nostalgia piece. Now, if Wargaming ever decide to sell this bad boy again, and they have this genius idea of, oh yeah, it has a lot of armor and it's such a good tank, do not fall for it, do not buy the KV-5. Even as a collector, it doesn't really hold a lot of value anymore. The games where you can do damage, as I've shown in the first one, they are so rare, and it's not worth the money you spend. I think the KV-5 is completely outdated, and in the year 2024, maybe it's time to just leave it be, let it rest, and enjoy the very good connection, the very good memories we still have of the KV-5, and not sour it in a time where the game has changed very drastically. Still a very cool tank, will always be one of my favorites, but I will probably not play it anymore. Yeah, so, you played the KV-5, tell me all your experiences. Are you going to come after me with pitchforks and torches? Because I've spoken the truth. No, KV-5, super cool tank as a historical vehicle, and also in the sense of this game's entire history and development time. But it's time to let go.